Hi, I'm Steve Smallshaw with the Lynchburg Government Channel LTV. For more than 150 years, the railroad has played a big part in the life of downtown Lynchburg. But Wednesday, April 30th was anything but a routine day for rail traffic along the riverfront. That's when a freight train carrying hundreds of thousands of gallons of crude oil derailed and caught fire. In this program, we'll take a look at how the city's first responders handled that disaster, what they might have done differently, and what's being done to prevent future derailments.
At the Depot Grill restaurant. There's a train derail right in front of the restaurant. There's a car on fire. I'm evacuating. Go ahead.
Okay, so a train derail?
A train derail right in front of the Depot Grill restaurant. I've got everybody getting out of the back of the restaurant right now in case anything blows.
Someone is in.
I would imagine. I do not know. I do not know. It looks like just rail cars, not an engine or a caboose, but I can feel the heat as soon as I walk out the door. Massive fire. Massive fire.
Initially, the first few calls were people that definitely knew it was a train derailment. After that, we were getting calls from further out when people were seeing the smoke, the clouds, smelling the fire. A lot of people assumed it was either a burning building or something like that. So we just tried to gather as much information from those people that we could and let them know about the incident and basically start to get out of that area some.
Lynchburg 911, what's the address of the emergency?
We're on Jefferson Street right now. Next to the tracks, we see a derailing of a train. There's a large fire, a lot of smoke.
Do you know if anyone's on the train?
No, it appears just to be a cargo train. I guess it's carrying some type of flammable liquid. See flammable signs on it, and they're clearly black tanks.
All right, we're getting someone on the way.
All right, excellent.
Just how many cars, do you know?
I see 7 cars are derailed. No, 8 cars are derailed, and part of the train detached from the rest.
Lynchburg 911, what's the address of the emergency?
The address is near the Depot Grill, ma'am. It's a huge fire. I mean, it looks like, I'm sorry, I can't believe it's that big. It really looks like it's going to explode. And I've got to get out. I've got to move. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm not lying.
If you can leave. We've got several people on the way now. Did you see what happened?
No, I came down by the city hall. And I saw a huge black smoke. And oh my God, I can't breathe. I'm sorry.
Okay, we've got someone on the way.
Yeah, it's like a huge ball of flame. Looks like it's getting worse, and it's definitely a chemical spill, probably.
All right, we're got them on the way.
Yes, the first few were definitely the most sure of what was going on. They had the most pertinent information. They were able to tell us that it was definitely a train derailment, the area that it covered, give us pretty exact locations. And those were the people that actually witnessed it and saw it, so that was definitely really helpful.
From the very beginning, we knew we had something down here significant, just didn't know what it was. But early on in the call, we did get some confirmations from Lincoln that it was a train derailment, and then there was a fire associated with the train derailment. So obviously the first thing that comes into mind is, okay, where has it derailed? What's on the train that's derailed? What is burning? How much is burning? And just all those questions go through your minds. It was certainly something that made you think. You know, when the drive from Station 1 down here was relatively short, but in that period of time I drove down here from Clay Street down to the river, I had a lot of things running through my mind, and I think the biggest thing I was concerned about was what did we have and what impact was it having on the riverfront, specifically the buildings and the citizens down here.
Everybody's safe. Let's keep them safe. There's no exposures. The only thing that we got going
we haven't got to the park yet, but what we can tell right now, we do have product in the river, but it is burning. It's on the surface and it is burning.
Okay, so I've got product burning on top of the river.
That's correct. And once we get over here, we'll give you more details.
So we need to figure out some way to get to the people at Griffin Pipe who are cut off by the train. I don't know if you want to go down there, you guys go down there and assess that. One of you go down there and assess that, figure out how we can get over there, what we can do to get those people out.
Because when we got down here, we had obviously the cars that were turned over and were burning and derailed, but the train went as far as we could see back up the river toward Griffin Pipe and back down the river toward Washington Street. So we had no idea how many cars were involved, how long the train was, whether there were subsequent derailments up track or down track, or was this the isolated derailment? So big concerns as to what impact it was having on the area down there.
I know it's going to blow. I can feel the heat. All right, we need to see if is TCAP evacuated? Is upstairs evacuated? They need to evacuate. TCAP needs to get out of the building. Everybody's out? All right, there's nobody in the building.
Was everybody out?
Thank you, baby. Okay. To my knowledge, everybody's out of the building.
Folks were actually self-evacuating when we got down here. Chief Smith had gotten here just before me, and people were self-evacuating. So they're really, the specific area around the depot and Amazement Square was evacuating itself pretty quickly. But that was one thing we had to ensure, that we had folks getting out of here, and then we had to identify what we had. There are placards on the side of the train or the side of any rail car or tanker car that give you an idea of what the material is. And we were able to identify the material on the train as crude oil, as a petroleum product, specifically crude oil. At the time, we did not know it was Bakken crude. We just knew it was crude oil.
Right.
So the guide that we use does give us some guidelines, some basic guidelines as far as evacuation distances and how to attack it and things of that nature. So we did use that right up front.
Tanks 1, 2, 6, 7. We're working on a chemical profile for that, and we're sending in entry teams to make a decision on whether or not we're just going to estimate the likely harm without intervention and let it continue its course without putting any water to increase the runoff. And that's where we're standing. We have decon set up, we have detection and monitoring set up, and we have a reference group set up. And the best that we can gather is 15 tank cars roughly have derailed. Not exactly sure how many are on fire. If I were to guess, I would say 2, maybe 3, but we're not exactly sure on that. The only closest exposure, yeah, there is a building that is an exposure, but it's not impinged on it right now. I mean, the fire, thank God for there's not much wind. Everything's going straight up, and it seems to be contained just around the tank cars. Now, if it were to get out of hand, then potentially we have maybe 1, maybe 2 exposures we have to worry about, but nothing right now.
In this particular case, we were able to identify that it was isolated to a particular area. So tactically, we decided to go ahead and let it burn itself out. There's a lot of different ways you can attack these things, and using the advice of folks that had gone across the river as well as the hazardous materials team, we decided that it was isolated to that one particular area, so we went ahead and just let it burn itself out. The only water we actually applied was to help take care of the brush fires and other fires associated with it.
I thought buildings were on fire and people were dead. You know, who knows what.
What was your first reaction when you got down there and saw what had happened?
Well, actually, you know, as I was walking down 9th Street, I saw the staff from the Depot Grill and asked them, is everybody okay? Is everybody out? And they said, yes, we're fine, everybody's out. So I started feeling a little bit better at that point, although still not knowing what it was. And then I got to the command post and I could see a little bit clearer what was going on there. There was a lot of concern about, you know, we have, I think the firefighters knew at that point that it was petroleum because it was marked on train cars, and they were concerned about the threat of an explosion, as if the fire continued, that other cars would then, they call it blevet, which a word I didn't know until that day. But anyway, the crude oil or the stuff in there vaporizes and then explodes, and so you could have train cars flying all over the place.
At what point did you realize you had to declare a state of emergency for the city?
I think I did that about 20 after 2, so it was fairly quickly once I got down there on the site and realized that we had a lot of resources that we were going to need, and there was we still didn't know about potential damage, potential impacts to businesses or people. Certainly city resources were already being actively engaged, and we have to declare an emergency in order to just start the wheels rolling on possible reimbursements.
But if we can make that strong assessment, then I'm all about putting those on there. But I'm really looking at that estimate likely harm with that intervention. And the biggest reason is because there's no exposures other than dumping into the tank. And if you're looking at life safety, critical systems, environment plays last, and we can worry about the fish later. I'm worried about the business. I'm on 5 round 3. What's that? DDM is coming through Bedford. Did you talk to CSX when they're sending off a slew of people. I told them just to come here, and he said that we need more.
One of the things I did very, very early on, within the first couple of minutes of the incident, was I tagged one of our engine company captains, Captain Ronnie Coleman, to assist me at the command post, and he became effectively my deputy incident commander. Some people may call it an aide, but I looked at Ronnie more as the deputy incident commander. And in that case, he's standing right beside me. He's got the same training I've got, and he's able to make decisions that go along with the plan that we have come up with. And it allows me the time to step away for a second to talk to the folks from the agencies coming in, and he was able to continue running the incident. And it was a seamless effort because I did have him there right beside me the entire time.
All right, do me a favor and just call CSX again and have them call me. Is this it? Back to the answer.
We in good shape, nothing else lights on. This will be an environmental problem, but it won't be blowing anything else up.
Contractor. We're trying to find an area right now so they can go ahead and put some harbor booms in. We want to try to contain this as quick as we can instead of chasing it. So they're a hazmat cleanup contractor. They're in the process of setting up some booms and some harbor booms down off Concord Turnpike. Okay. So we can try. We've already also notified you, wastewater department, let them aware of it.
And if you've got anybody in the river, you can let our fire department know, because we've got boats so we can,
yes, sir.
if we need them.
Yes, sir.
Standing by.
We'll take care of that.
Okay, great.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Appreciate you being so. Amen.
I got Brian Furman, the medium state officer down there now, making assessment. He's going to come back up here in just a few minutes. 3 to 4 tanks breached, with maybe 2 or 3 submerged in the river with product going downriver and trying to contain it as aggressive as we can. We got some booms that are set out down in the Concord Turnpike area, but some product has gotten past that and actually down by Monica Bridge, so we're working on getting the team down there to set some more booms up, trying to catch that. I'm waiting to hear back, so that's kind of where we're at.
Firefighters on the scene of a massive train crash along the James River. The CSX tanker carrying crude oil derailed in downtown Lynchburg.
Yeah, I really wasn't clued into that. I didn't know that it was such a national event. I mean, my first clue was I'm getting text messages from CBS News on my cell phone. I'm going, how do they even have my cell phone number? And the national attention that we got from, you know, the LA Times, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Washington Post, CBS News, Al Jazeera. Right. It was just pretty amazing and then as people kind of got beyond, okay, nobody's dead, there's not a lot of damage here, the fire's out, that immediate thing that the media was interested in, then they started saying, well, do you know what's going through your city? And then I'm starting to realize, well, this is a bigger issue than I had imagined.
CSX says crude oil shipments make up less than 1% of their total business, and that crude oil trains only pass through Lynchburg just a couple of times a week on average. But those numbers could go up as oil production across North America continues to grow. So the question remains, how do you prevent similar accidents from happening again? A week after the April 30th derailment, Governor Terry McAuliffe stopped by Lynchburg to thank first responders for their work that day and to announce that he was creating a rail safety task force to study the issue.
Was that you in the helicopter up there?
That was us, yeah.
I thought it might have been.
Yeah. Taking a little look around, seeing what was going on. So how does it look? Well, they've been moving quick to make it look, you know, get it back to its shape. But
very industrial.
Probably as clean as it's ever been. We got to check that river, though. We got to keep our feet on CSX.
Yeah, because it's your drinking water.
You bet it is.
Not ours, but yours.
I know it. Yeah, because you're right above it. Your valve, right?
We get it from the peddler north of us. Yeah.
And a couple of
that's where the stuff went over the bank there to the river, and because when it caught on fire, it set some of the bank on fire, and it burned downstream for the way. No real damage other than clean scrub, burned the brush up. And then we had a number of cars, I think 17 total, 14 up and 3 in the river, laid over down through here. The biggest thing after the rupture, we determined that there was, you know, what we had burning caused placarded with it, 1267 crude oil.
Yeah.
And once that was determined, we decided.
Where's that, North Dakota?
Yeah.
Start right here. Captain Williams was actually the hazmat team leader on that day.
Captain, how are you?
How are you, sir?
Great. Thanks for all your great work. Appreciate it.
So he was responsible for figuring out immediately what was in the cars and how to deal with it and getting additional resources, contacted the Virginia Emergency Operations Center, working with our leader regional hazmat officer, Neil Shorley. So he and his crew, and then they were here. They kept coming back throughout the incident to deal with it. But he was the first person I went to and talked to.
Good. How soon were you on the site?
It was probably within 5 to 7 minutes, roughly, from all the way across town.
And you trained for this, so
yes,
ready
sir.
to go. Good for you. Any advice for me? Anything we need to do differently?
No, I think everything went well.
Yeah, it did.
The tireless efforts of everybody working went real good. Good. And, led to a successful outcome.
Yeah, you bet.
Wade Collins, our VDM has.
How are you? Good to see you again. How you doing, buddy? Good. Very good.
Brian Thurman, who is the regional hazmat.
How are you? Great to see you. Thanks for all your great work.
He works very closely with the city's hazmat.
Well, I wanted to come today first, see the site myself firsthand. We toured it by helicopter, and the chief just showed me where the cars had gone into the river. So it's important to come see it. I had been briefed up to date constantly by my Department of Public Safety, Deputy Secretary Adam Teal, who is here with me today. But I wanted to come by and just say thank you. First of all, to all the first responders, to the elected officials of the City of Lynchburg and the Emergency Management Services, the police, the fire, all of our state agencies, the NTSB. With minutes of this occurring, I spoke to Secretary Fox, the United States Secretary of Transportation. Everybody was all in to do what we needed to do. But it was the folks here on the ground that responded immediately, here within 5 to 7 minutes. So I commend everybody for that great work, but we all got mobilized. We did this the Virginia way, everybody coming together to do the right thing. So I am very pleased at what I've seen here today. But obviously I have grave concerns. Obviously this is federal regulation. But grave concerns about cargo being so close to our rivers. As you know, right here, this river, the James River, is the drinking water for the city of Richmond, where we are. So we need to continue, and I'm working with Senator Kane and Senator Warner on federal issues that affect this to make sure we're doing everything we can on prevention at the federal level. I also will be announcing today, we'll be sending out a release in the state. We are going to do our own railway task force. We're going to bring in the experts, both public and private sector. We're going to convene folks so that we make sure we're doing everything we can at the state level. This is so important for us. Our assets that we have here with the James River. I recently toured the Dan River down in Danville, where a coal ash spill from North Carolina. We're monitoring that. We are fortunate in both of these situations right now. Our drinking water is safe. But it reminds us every day that accidents do occur. And we need to make sure we're doing everything that we possibly can as it relates to the prevention at the federal level and then obviously the response. But the team here was spectacular. And I wanted to come by firsthand and say thank you to everybody for the outstanding work they did here in the city of Lynchburg. But it affects not only Lynchburg, it affects the entire Commonwealth of Virginia. The pictures, the fires, as you know, were all over the nation and the globe, the fire. So everybody was aware of this situation, but we responded as we always do, and we were fortunate on this one. But we've got to be ever vigilant to make sure we're protecting the citizens of the Commonwealth of Virginia. So.
Is it too soon to start looking at routing trains with Bakken crude around our major population centers?
No, it's not too soon to look at that. I said as soon as this incident occurred that, and I talked to Secretary Fox about this, and I've talked to our senators about this. Some of this cargo is going through densely populated areas. Some of this cargo is going very adjacent to rivers that supply our drinking water. So we ought to have everything on the table. Absolutely. No, it's not too early. This is an issue that I've raised myself.
And do the first responders know enough to respond? Obviously, these guys did a great job, but they didn't have instant access to information about what was on this train.
And that is one thing that they've just come out with some new guidelines that when cargo is going through your jurisdiction, we need to know what's going through the Commonwealth of Virginia, and that's already been put out in the new guidelines federally, and I support that 100%. That's the first question I asked Secretary Teal when I talked to him. What was on it? We don't know yet. That's unacceptable. Couldn't agree with him more.
Will the state have to fund any additional training for first responders, especially in smaller communities?
Secretary?
We're absolutely looking at, we have a lot of training now through the Department of Emergency Management and the Department of Fire programs, and we're absolutely looking at doing more and working in concert with our public and private sector partners. That'll be one of the areas that the working group that the governor mentioned is going to be focusing on.
The good news is we did it right here. And it really is a testament and compliment to everybody who came together from, VDEM, VDOT, the Virginia State Police, all of our state agencies come together working with the city and the NTSB. But, listen, we did it right here. But, as I say, we have to always be vigilant because the next time it could be a different cargo, it could be a different accident. If these rail cars had not tipped off and gone into the river, what if they tipped and gone this side? In the population center, I just went by a facility there were hundreds of kids out front. So this is why we do the work we do. This is why at VDEM we do what we do every single day. In fact, my next cabinet meeting will actually be out at VDEM. Where our entire cabinet will come together for a situation. We will actually go through a catastrophic situation that could happen in Virginia and do a preparation for that. So every day we're all vigilant trying to do these.
And he's talking about creating a rail safety task force so we have a better idea of what is being shipped through not just Lynchburg, but the state of Virginia on a daily basis. Is that a good idea? From your perspective, was that going to be helpful?
Absolutely. I think the thing that would help most is just, I don't need to, as a battalion chief of the fire department, I don't necessarily need to know that at 2 o'clock every day a train of Bakken crude is going to come through here at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock or whatever. What would help me most is to know on a general basis what is coming through town, because I need to, from my perspective as a potential incident commander, I need to know what's on the train.
Right.
I need to know, okay, this particular train that's coming through here 3 days a week is going to have this product on it. I don't need to necessarily know what time of the day it's going to come through or whatever, but it would be nice to know what comes through the area on a regular basis.
What we've seen is a 4,000% increase, I think, in this traffic. And that number might not be right, but it's an enormous increase in this traffic. We weren't getting any petroleum coming through here at all, and now we're getting, a couple of cars a week maybe, and I've heard it's going to go up to maybe a couple of cars a day. And clearly there have been a series of accidents across the country that have drawn people's attention to it. And I think, it's appropriate for public officials to say what's going on in the area over which we have jurisdiction, what can or should we do about it, and are we prepared to deal with an accident if it occurs. We're still struggling with some issues of how we set up. It's called command, but I feel more comfortable calling it support for the folks who are there in first response. How can we relieve them of some of the stuff that they probably shouldn't have to deal with? Like if we need to set up a shelter, for example. It shouldn't be the incident commander's responsibility. There should be a support system that says, okay, we're going to need to set up a shelter. We're going to need to do this. To do the financial aspects or whatever else needs to go. So how we relieve both the incident commander and we relieve the dispatchers who get a lot of phone calls and set up a support organization to support this in an ongoing situation is something I think we're still trying to work through. I personally have said, look, I'm not going to go 10 miles away to an emergency operations center when my downtown's on fire. I can't do that. Somebody could go, though, potentially. But as we move to the Web EOC, the need for that all being in a room together is maybe less critical, as long as we're getting the information flow going. I think in retrospect, one of the things we probably could have done or should have done the day after the event was sit down as a group and say, where are we? How are we going forward with this? What do we need? And then, do we have the proper support structure in place? And we didn't do that. A lot of that was being kind of done on the fly. I think it would have been helpful just to keep everybody on the same page if we'd done that.
Still, the initial response was more than adequate, and really anything else that we can improve on is more planning purposes, I guess.
Planning, support, and what happens if the incident is more extended. If we had exploding train cars and multiple buildings on fire and people had, lost their homes or businesses, how would we? And then we had a huge cleanup on our hands that was, maybe along the lines of the derecho, but actually buildings damaged. How would we have handled that in the longer term? Something that would have taken weeks to clean up. As it was, this cleanup, although we supported it, was purely a CSX cleanup. It was on their property. It was their responsibility, and there was plenty of oversight and plenty of support, but it's not something we had to make sure happened on public property.
Oh, sure. I mean, you can always go back at the end of the day and say, well, we could have done this a little differently, we could have done that a little differently. At the end of the day, though, there was nothing wrong with our operation. We did everything the way we should have. Again, you can Monday morning quarterback your own incident until you're blue in the face, but at the end of the day, we did what we were supposed to do. the incident ended up taking care of itself. We did have the right command structure in place. So again, yeah, there's things that we talked about in after action review, things we can improve. Not only we had our own in the department that we can improve as a department, but then we had some conversations on the city level as to how can we improve, make things more efficient, not necessarily better, just make things more efficient to where if we have something like this happen again, we've already got some things in place to make it run smoother, not necessarily better.
And so to say we're prepared for anything, I don't know. I think we have an excellent response capability. We have excellent training. We have excellent knowledge. But if there's some new thing coming through the city on a tractor trailer or on a train that could damage people here, I'd like to know. We'd like to know about it and know how to prepare for it. Again, I think we'll learn from this. We have exercises planned for later this year. Those were going to happen anyway. What I have found out is that CSX was planning to bring what they call a petroleum safety train, a crude oil safety train through here. I think they're going to bring it through here in June still. Right. So I think they're committed to making sure that our first responders are trained in how to handle this. It's just the timing of this was what it was. Right.